The White House press office, your office, continues to pre-screen reporters allowed into large indoor events that formerly, under past presidents, were open to all journalists. Last June, almost a year ago, 73 journalists, including reporters from nearly two-thirds of the seats in this room, signed a letter calling the process antithetical concept of a free press. And the Correspondents Association also has lobbied for it to be done away with. Last July, you said that ending the restrictions was a priority, yet they remain. So I was wondering if you could commit to once and for all doing away with this mysterious pre-screening process.
No, I appreciate the question, Stephen. Look, every event is different, but no matter what the venue set up, we always credential as many reporters in the room as possible. I'm going to.
Seats. Are you still committed to rolling back this restriction and ending the pre-screening process?
But here's the thing: there is no restriction. Every event is different.
And they hear the president say that the United States will support Ukraine in this conflict as long as it takes. And we further hear you and the president say that the decision-making as to how long the conflict goes on, when negotiations will be entertained, are all left up to President Zelensky. Why shouldn't the American people conclude that a critical decision-making about our national security, our taxpayer resources, our military, are in fact being outsourced or utterly given over to a foreign leader instead of being made by our president?
These decisions are being made by certainly the commander-in-chief, but with full support from not only both houses of Congress, but both parties up on Capitol Hill. There's been tremendous support for that. And I think the American people are smart enough to realize that that if we just walk away from this and we just let Putin take Ukraine, then what's next?
We saw that cyber attack she's talking about. The spy balloon that flew over. The Chinese have not implemented the intellectual property protections they said they were going to do under the Phase 1 trade deal. So this level of representation in China right now, does that send a bad message that there'll be no repercussions no matter what China does?
These CEOs really should be allowed to speak for themselves and for their travel. There's never been some sort of fiat by the White House or the U.S. government that the American business executives can't travel to China and can't. Also heard in Hiroshima, you were there, that these G7 leaders, they have concerns about unfair trade practices, employment practices, intellectual theft, and certainly the potential risks of outbound investments in China. And they came away from Hiroshima
on efforts that the United States is making to get Evan Gershkovich back and any other prisoners. There's U.S. prisoners in Iran. There's folks elsewhere that have been, the potential subjects of potential prisoner swaps. Are any of those efforts coming to fruition or advancing in ways that make you all optimistic?
All I can tell you, Michael, is that we're working on all these cases.
Is there anything that makes you optimistic on any of those cases?
I would just say that we're working each one very, very hard. I don't know that I could stand here and give you, a grade level in terms of optimism.
The deficit, this is something that the president takes very seriously, $1.7 trillion that he was able to reduce the deficit in his first 2 years.
Most of that $1.7 trillion that went off for the first 2 years was COVID spending that ran off. And the CBO says the deficit actually will increase. Next year it's 1.7. It was 1.4 this year, 1.7 next year, and then up to 2 point something in 10 years.
I get the argument. You didn't need COVID spend anymore, so you shouldn't take credit for deficit reduction.
Take your question.
So what happens if the debt ceiling bill comes to the president's desk next Tuesday, a day after the X date? Would the U.S. then technically be in default?
So look, what we're going to focus on is getting this done. That's what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on the Houses. We believe the House is going to pass this and take this out of the House. It's going to go to the Senate. It's going to go out of the Senate. And so we believe that this is going to get done, and that's what we're going to focus on, and that's going to be our main priority.
Have there been any conversations between the president and Senate Majority Leader Schumer to try and speed it up in the Senate?
We're going to leave that process, the mechanics of how this is going to move through the Senate up to Leader Schumer. Obviously, we are in a short time frame here, and it's important to get this done as quickly as possible. As you just mentioned, the June 5th X date that the Treasury clearly spoke to recently.